Hello, I'm ELD, and we are covering Double Masters, and this set just keeps getting more and more ridiculous. The booster box price is creeping up there. I've said from the beginning I think this is going to be a $350 booster box, no problem. I don't know. To me, this looks a lot like Ultimate Masters. I think they're bringing back a Masters series. In their minds, I think this is kind of like relaunching a product, and if there's one thing that Wizards does when they try something new or try and bring something back is they really swing for the fences. And we still have like 90 cards left, and this set is already completely insane. Starting out here at Common with Ancient Stirrings, an absolute powerhouse card in green. I think actually probably underplayed given how good it is. And it assembles Tron, it finds lands, it finds colorless cards if you're an artifact heavy deck, and this card just does a lot of heavy lifting. If you're going to have multiple, not targets, but multiple cards that you can find that you're going to be happy finding with this card, it is a very powerful addition, very blue feeling, but also feels green in terms of what you're able to find with it. We're going to go the other way this time. Spoiler alert there. We've got Riku at the end of the video. Sword of Body in mind. Again, I think these arts for these swords are going to be fan favorites. Absolutely beautiful and just very flavorful, well executed, all of them so far. Just really some beautiful, beautiful additions to give people options for cards that they enjoy sleeving up. There, of course, is the original. And the ability on this, I think all of these swords are super good and limited. I don't know how much people are actually going to be playing limited with this. I love the idea of doing sealed deck with this. I think the decks are going to be super powerful. But, you know, the ticket on that is going to be up there. So it may not be certainly as popular as $4 boosters doing a sealed deck. This could be a really good one to make a cube out of. I actually, for Conspiracy and the original Modern Masters, went through and did a booster cube. For those unfamiliar with that, what you do is you take one of each mythic, two of each rare, and that is essentially a rare sheet. So if you shuffle that up and you pull your cards out of that, it's going to be the same as a booster pack distribution, with the exception of the fact that you can't actually get duplicates of a mythic. Then from there you get three of each uncommon at any given draft table. It's super unusual for anybody to get more than three within a pool. And then for each common, you do six of each common, and that's enough to build booster packs to do a draft with. It's pretty much the same exact feel as a booster draft. You're able to just rebuild packs over and over and over again without having to buy the expensive packs. And I think it's a great thing to do if you really love a particular set. And it doesn't just have to be a master set, even like a standard block, if you really enjoy it. I personally like that. I think it's a pretty fun project to do. And if you are buying booster boxes, it gives you a huge upside to all of the extra commons and uncommons that you might not necessarily have a ton of use for. And just a really fun way to play. I actually did that with my nephews over the summer here. We played a game outside, and it was a lot of fun. To see them go through that deck building process with Modern Masters was pretty wild. Mesmeric Orb. This card mills. I mean, I'll say that. It does actually mill stuff. I love the fact that it says it now. It's a fun little addition to Magic vernacular to finally be enshrined in the actual rules of the game. And this card has been a fan favorite for a long time. People enjoy milling strategies, and usually people enjoy milling strategies if they're not too good. If it's just like a straight up combo kill, people don't really enjoy that. They like milling you turn after turn, and Mesmeric Orb does do that, and also creates an interesting game of trying to figure out exactly how best to use your resources. So overall, I like this Magic card. Sword of Light and Shadow. Now this card, I think, is probably one of the few exceptions for Death and Taxes in terms of metagaming. I think overall Death and Taxes is pretty clear what the best options are, but Sword of Light and Shadow, especially when combined with Fairy Macabre, is a card that can give it a level of grindiness that is just too much for a lot of different strategies to handle. And I think this one's potentially where you want to be. Giving your creature protection from black can be very big. in terms of making sure that they can't remove it, and the gaining the 3 life can become relevant in some of those matchups, as well as, of course, recurring of either your key threats or answers, or something like Fairy Macabre that you can just go to town on their graveyard. High Market, a Aristocrat's enabler, sacrificing a creature to only gain 1 life. It's no Diamond Valley, but it's not the most expensive thing to include in your deck, and you can get around permanent removal, like exiling or phasing out permanently with Oubliette by sacrificing the creature and potentially recurring it later. Disciple of Bolas. This card was very, very powerful in the, M15 or something? I mean, this card was brutal. Gaining X life, drawing X cards, where X is that creature's power, was really, really potent. And of course, if you were in like black-green and you had any type of pump, I mean, that's just silly and limited, just drawing a crazy amount of cards. So yeah, this one's better than it might look to some, and one of those cards that's not worth very much, but, is very, very good in limited. And, I've definitely been seeing some kind of hatred towards the bulk rares, let's call them, just cards that aren't worth very much, and that is booster packs. So I mean, booster packs are not going to be, they sell you something for $10 and then everything you open is always going to end up being worth more than $10. The market would just price that out and make it a $20 pack or a $30 pack. So the garbage cards are what enable the price to be where it is. It's part of the calculation within the market, and honestly also makes it part of the fun. Like if you find something good every single time, it's not really fun. Like, people play slot machines, they don't play vending machines. You don't just sit in front of a vending machine giving it dollars and getting excited about your Skittles. You need that uncertainty, and the losses are what make actually winning something that's exciting. Now, it's not something that I personally partake in. I am more of a person that enjoys getting cards to people, getting collections, buying collections. That's something that I've trained myself to enjoy. I've kind of intentionally not enjoyed opening packs for the sake of opening packs. I've trained myself to love competition. But if you find yourself in a situation where you genuinely enjoy opening boosters, it's probably not a bad thing to understand exactly what that entails psychologically. And a big part of that is that potential absolute whiff to balance out just the incredible God packs. Sword of Light and Shadow, man, just stunning. The chains coming down, illuminated, just drawing your eyes in that kind of triangular composition. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. These Magic artists that they are tapping in for these masterpiece cards. Sorry about that beeping, guys. I mean, they really are doing incredible work here, and I would not be surprised. I know I've seen some of these pieces, the originals, going for in excess of $25,000, and it is no surprise. These are going to be a treasured part of the history of the game going forward, regardless of how Double Masters is preceded by, or is followed up by other sets. If they never do Master sets again, or if this starts a whole new era of Master sets. Either way, I think that these cards are just absolutely phenomenal. Thopter Foundry goes along with so much of the other stuff that they've been doing. I was curious when we saw the Time Sieve and some of the other stuff, if they'd actually put in Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek, and they have. You can play Thopter Foundry in your limited deck, and that's going to be tough to beat. I'm not going to lie. That is a brutal combination, and that is something that you could potentially live the dream. Neither one of these are like super, super dangerous on their own. I mean, they're fine, but like together, pretty much unbeatable when we're talking about limited. It's actually a constructed strategy, which most decks just fold to. Leonin Abunis, totally new art. Yeah, I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but it is new art. The original wasn't like phenomenal either, but giving people options is important, and I actually like to see art that I don't love in Magic. I think if it's all kind of so safe that everybody likes every card, I don't think they're trying enough crazy stuff. I want to see stuff that is appealing to a wide range of aesthetic tastes. The Scarab God, we'll see if the other gods are in here or any other gods. This is just happens to be the constructed. I muted that. It's still beeping at me. Sorry. This guy happens to be incredibly good in constructed, whereas some of the other gods not so much. So we'll see. If at Mythic, we'll see how much the price bounces down. I've been noticing booster boxes ticking up. I finally had to increase the price of the boosters I have left. We are at $329.99 on booster boxes of Double Masters now, and I've been saying the whole time I think they're going to end up being $350, and we'll see. We'll see. I mean, Mythics like this definitely help the cause, as does Mana Echoes. I think this card was like $40 or something. And, you know, at Mythic, we'll see how much it goes down, but this is a card that Commander players absolutely love. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you can add amount of colorless equal to the number of creatures you control that share a type with it. Allows all sorts of spiraling out of control. You know, it's based off of the creature type, so colorless artifact creatures, you got to check a lot of those older ones. Many of them have been given creature types, like Arcbound Ravager is a beast now for whatever reason. I mean, he looks like a construct. I don't know what they're going for there, but that is the type of thing that you want to check and see what you're going to be doing with your commander deck, because there's going to be some crazy interactions with this card that'll spiral out of control and let you win the game. Maelstrom Pulse. You know, this card doesn't get much love anymore. Assassin's Trophy came along. Abrupt Decay kind of pushed it out to a large degree. Now Assassin's Trophy, you know, does a lot of the same type of things that this would do and more. At 3 mana, the fact that it gets all permanents with the same name doesn't come up as often in Commander, except for, of course, with the very notable exception of creating tokens. That is super important. A lot of the time tokens have the same name, making a ton of goblins or fairies or whatever. So getting rid of all of those can be very good in Commander. Other than that, it's a overall solid Magic card. I mean, the design, totally fine. But right now, a lot of cards are erring on the side of lower casting costs, being able to play more things out within a turn. Awakening Zone. For whatever reason, I actually had a hard time keeping this card in stock. There's not a lot of cards that I look at and I'm like, oh, that's actually one that, like, I know people have been looking for that I haven't had for any amount of time. And yeah, Awakening Zone is just one of those cards that just don't always have. I probably have it now, but there have been times in history where people were asking for Awakening Zone, and I'm just like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I just don't. And this card I also love. Way back in the day, playing in Vintage, I was playing against a mono green Eldrazi deck, and I may have told this story before on the channel, so feel free to skip ahead if you've heard it. But I was playing Vintage, and at the time I was one of the top 10 players in the world, very, very serious about understanding the metagame and playing for prizes. And these kids showed up to the tournament, a brother and sister, and they, between them, had a few decks. And one of them, their best deck, which had never lost, was this mono green Eldrazi deck. And I played against this girl and absolutely stomped her because I was playing some broken Gush deck or whatever. And it was a merciless beating. I would never take it easy on anyone, not even my grandmother, certainly not in a tournament setting. But afterwards, I talked to her for a little bit about the deck and thought it was really cool, and asked her if she had ever heard of the card Channel. And she could not believe that card actually existed and how good it would be to be able to turn one in Emrakul. So I gave her a Channel, one of the From the Vault foil ones with Rebecca Gay art. That was not very much money back then, but it was just a thing that she just couldn't even. You would have thought it was $100 card with how excited she was. But I told her, you can't put this in your deck in this tournament, but next time around, go ahead and play this. So she is totally psyched. The brother comes over, assumes that she had won because she's so happy, and she's like, oh no, I lost. And he's like, oh, well, why didn't you play the Eldrazi deck? And she's like, I did. And he's like, whoa, the Eldrazi deck lost? Like, he couldn't even imagine this deck losing. So The next round, they end up getting paired together. She wins, of course. The next round after that, she ends up paired against a guy playing a workshop deck, which uses cards like Tangle Wire and Sphere of Resistance to kind of make your spells cost one more. Well, the whole deck is ramp. And Awakening Zone actually makes plenty of permanents to tap down the Tangle Wire. So the whole room is like watching this match as it's the last match playing. And this guy, who's like a very serious vintage player, ends up losing to a Kozilek with a Hedron Matrix, I think it's called. It's like an equipment that doubles the creature's power equipped to it. And he ends up losing to this ridiculous thing. And he's got like a bunch of like Thorn of Amethyst and Sphere of Resistance and things. And it's like, oh, the the Kozilek costs 12 instead of 10. Like, this deck doesn't care. So absolutely ridiculous. She wins that game. So in this kid's head, the deck is still pretty much unbeatable. And then the final round before cutting to top 8, she gets paired up against somebody who's playing Baleful Strix. And this is the only time I've ever been tempted to make a wrong judge call because of the people involved. It's never even crossed my mind to ever give anybody preferential treatment. And it just, for a split second, it popped into my head because the defending player was at 15 life and she had an Emrakul and she was attacking and he had a Baleful Strix out. And she was like, no, you can't block because it's got protection from colored spells. And I just, it tempted me. I didn't do it. I had to explain that that's not how that works. But for a moment, just letting her get into the top 8 with that deck would have just been just too much. But she ended up, of course, Emrakul blocked it after the Annihilator trigger. Emrakul was blocked after the Annihilator trigger, and the guy went on to win the game. But it was really cool to see those kids step up. This was so many years ago now. I'm curious where they are in their Magic playing careers now, if they ended up being tournament players or if they just went back to the kitchen table or what. I didn't see them again after that. This was up in New Hampshire. But that just, every time I see Awakening Zone, I think of that just incredulous look of just like, well, why didn't you play the Eldrazi deck? Like, how could you lose? And, that's what happens when people step up from the kitchen table to tournament play. It's just like, it's a whole new world. It really is. The level and the refinement that happens is on another level than what you could ever come up with on your own. That's another beautiful thing about Magic, is it's so many people cooperating to come up with the best strategies, and they don't even know each other necessarily. Fetid Heath, part of this whole cycle with Cascade Bluff, Twilight Mire, Rugged Prairie, and Flooded Grove enemy filter lands, very powerful. I believe this makes the whole spine of 10 of them run throughout the packs, and I think that bodes well. I really do. Historically, sets that have strong runs of non-basic lands do very well. You look at Khans of Tarkir, you look, of course, at Modern Masters 2017 and the original enemy fetch lands. They just make such a huge difference in terms of the value. A card like this, it can be difficult long-term for this to dip below, say, $10. It's an arbitrary number, but just saying, like, it's not going to be a 50-cent card. It's really good. It's playable any format that it's legal in, and is actually optimal for many strategies for Commander, where you can't do any better. You don't have revised dual lands. You don't have more than one fetch land of a color combination. Chief of the Foundry, a 2/3 for 3. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Doesn't care about their creature type, just the super type artifact. And, this is fine for many Commander decks. I don't think any constructed decks I can think of actually play it. But, in a super artifact heavy meta with certain power and toughness kind of slots that could get interesting, like if it was... I'm stretching here. A lot of them have smaller butts, so like Lodestone Golems, turning it from a 6/4 still trades with your opponent's 5/3, so you're probably not playing this in Constructed ever, but it's fine in Limited if you've got a ton of artifacts. The Chronic Isochron Scepter. This card was widely embraced when it came out. One of the first Facebook groups that I ever created, New England Eternal. We actually used a picture of Isochron Scepter with an imprinted Time Walk on it. That was a play that new players would make all the time. They'd get so excited when in the Mirrodin era when they had drawn both of those cards. They would try and imprint Time Walk to take all the turns, and you'd have to explain to them that Time Walk is very much a sorcery, and that does not work. But it was kind of like the ultimate noob play back in the day. Basically, Isochron, it is really good with anything with like card drawing, any type of thing that will just drag the game out. And of course, most famously with Orum's Chant, to be able to just lock your opponent out of the game, not having any type of attack steps or playing spells during the upkeep. You'd be able to fire that off, and they'd have to have some type of instant speed way to destroy the Scepter. And of course, you've got some counter spells for that. Ash Barrens. This may be the final nail in the coffin for the price of this card. We will see. At one point, this was super expensive. The Ash Barrens was, I want to say, $10 or something crazy when it was only a single printing, because it's incredibly good in Pauper. This is so good. The ability to basic land cycle for one is significantly better in many decks than using things like Terramorphic Expanse or the other one. I'm not going to remember it right now. Doesn't matter. There's one just like it. Let me know in the comments what I missed there. But Ash Barrens, premium mana fixing in Pauper, and despite the uncommon mana symbol on there, it is originally printed as a common and really changed the landscape for Pauper with its printing. And I'd imagine at this point will probably end up just being a fairly inexpensive card moving forward, depending on how big this print run is. Mirror Retriever, talking about Pauper, this is insane. I don't know if you guys realize people have been waiting for this card to get downshifted for a while, and this is able to loop Mirror Retrievers together to do infinite damage with something like a Disciple of the Vault. So if you have like an Ashnod's Altar, sacrifice this, get 2 colorless, just get a Mirror Retriever back, just loop through, and that could be a turn 3 kill. Like literally just turn 1 Disciple, turn 2 Mirror Retriever, turn 3 Ashnod's Altar, and just go to town. So we'll see. In between the artifact lands and potential accelerants like Lotus Petal, you could actually go faster. Thopter Engineer. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter with flying. Artifact creatures you control have haste. Probably from Kaladesh. I didn't actually do much limited in Kaladesh, so I can't speak to how good this card actually is. Seems tough to evaluate. I mean, it's kind of got 2 power for 3 mana, which is not super exciting. It's split in between the 2, and a 1/1 Thopter really depends on your synergy of your deck. Artifact creatures having haste. Haste is one of the most important abilities that's ever been printed on a Magic card when it comes to creatures, is it makes them more spell-like. One of the big problems with creatures is they come down, they sit there, look stupid while you lose the game. We're very early on in Magic, it was kind of like, it's this game where you play creatures and you attack and you block, and it didn't take long before people figured out that you could completely sidestep all of that type of stuff and just win with other types of combos. And haste has something to say about that. So I don't know. Let me know if you guys think this card's actually good and limited. I guess it'll depend on the rest of the set, but it could potentially fit into any type of artifact theme. Forecasting cost, Jorah's Familiar, a 2/2 flyer, making historic spells you cast cost 1 less. Artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. And yeah, probably a fine enabler especially if there's some type of combo that would let you go infinite mana with the Mirror Retriever thing in limited, if there's some type of good sack outlet to loop them. Mishra's Factory, probably just going to be good in every deck in limited. It's not that much of a cost to slot this in instead of a basic land. 2/2 Assembly Worker. You can also tap to make other Assembly Workers +1/+1. This card is eternal playable, so I think this would be fine for your limited deck. And Riku of 2 Reflections spoiled. The Commander 2011 reprint. I believe they did a judge printing at one point, but this card has been difficult for some people to get who don't shop online or don't have a local game store. You're probably not going to be able to easily trade for it unless you've got a store like ours near you. And this one is getting a whole bunch more copies in the pool, and a really fitting card, of course, with the whole double masters theme. So they're trying to keep it flavorful, and they've done that with Riku. That is it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel, we are selling double masters at our shop online. You can check out the link in the description and support the channel that way. Thanks for watching.